Alrighty, we are live and ready to roll. What is going on, Dan and Caleb?
Living our lives. I've got it's 10 o'clock my time, and I've got probably 3 hours of work to do on this sprint.
What are you working on?
I'm working on my next YouTube video. Don't ask me what it
Nice.
is. Part of the 3 hours is figuring that out.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm relaxing tonight. The kids are at their grandparents for the week, and
Nice.
we're getting ready to go camping trip this weekend. But I'm jumping back into Memories of Ice. I'm already there. We go. What's up, Robert?
What's up? What's up?
Robert.
Yeah, just gonna get some reading in. It's quiet. I hope my dogs went upstairs. If not, you'll hear them barking soon.
Nice. Cool. I'm sending this out to some Discords so people can come hang out with us.
Nice.
What's going on, Rob? How you doing? Robert.
Good. I'm alive. I
That's a plus.
put my son down, and there's always a moment where I'm like, do I just go to sleep as well and not wake back up? So I had a 15-minute power nap before coming on here, but it's cool. It's good.
All right, so at least people are hearing us. I see some
Yeah.
comments.
What's going on, Nala?
What's up? What's up, Rogue? I'm back at it again, just for you.
Oh yeah, that's what you were starting that the last time we did a
Yeah.
sprint, right?
And I have read
Nice.
one chapter since then because
That sounds right.
I can only read physical books when I am forced to read physical books.
You do a lot of audio?
I do some audio. Mainly, I read on my phone. It feels like blasphemy
Really?
to a lot of people, but my phone is just it's always with me, and it's so much easier to just pull that out if I've got 5 minutes. So I end up reading way faster if I've got the book on my phone.
That's true. What's going on, Anthony?
Hey, Anthony.
I mean, the issue is I don't have everything that I'm reading physically on Kindle, and I use the Kindle app. Some of the stuff, I do download the ebook if it's available in my library, so I have it. So I do the same thing. Like if I'm sitting at gymnastics practice or whatever, I'll read 20 or 30 pages, but I can't, my stamina is not there for reading on my phone. I don't know what it is. I can't do it.
I find
Do
that
you? Oh yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say because I feel like I get way more reading done. I'm kind of like Rob. I exclusively read on my Kindle and on my phone, and that's basically it. The majority of the books I own, you actually see in my YouTube videos.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if I didn't like collecting books so much, it's just logistically makes so much more sense to buy everything on Kindle. Storage, it's cheaper, but
It's way more. So this is my first e-reader. I got it for my birthday this past April. It's just so much more. I feel like I read more on the Kindle. I don't know why. It seems like you're tapping the pages and they go by quicker. And it's just comfortable. You don't have to turn a page. You can just sit there and tap and move right along. And I feel like I get more done when I read on the Kindle. But I hate the fact that I don't get to collect the book, buy the book and put it somewhere on my shelf so it can be seen.
yeah.
I was gonna say I have an old Nook from my days working at Barnes & Noble that I've had since 2010, 2011, and it actually still works. It's trucking along, and I use that and side load stuff from the library. But I got cured of the need to hold on to books when I moved from Oklahoma to New Mexico and had to just jettison half of the stuff in order to make the move. And after that, I'm just collecting books. I can't do it. I already had to part with too many at one point.
Yeah.
Anthony says I go with whatever is cheaper. Yeah, I mean, it's so much cheaper, Anthony. Most of the time, it's a lot cheaper on Kindle. Is that true, Caleb?
Yeah, in a technical sense, individually the books are cheaper, but I always go on sprees and I spend $10 or $15. I will never read all the books I own on Kindle, and I will probably buy 5 more this weekend.
Dude, when I got it, like I have Kindle Unlimited, I legit went to every Kindle Unlimited book and just started downloading anything that was free.
Yeah.
And my wife like turns over, it's 2:30 in the morning. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, I'm at the library, I'm literally at the library in my Kindle, oh, that looks good. Download.
Why spend
Yeah.
$30 on a hardback I really want to read? Well, I can buy 10 Kindle ebooks I will never get around to reading.
Right.
I like building my library right now because obviously I feel like I'm way behind because I really have only started avidly reading like 3-4 years ago or so. So I just, I had that back there, but I also have another big shelf of all my Abercrombie and all my George R.R. Martin and a few on the bottom. And I just want a nice looking a nice looking couple shelves, a wall shelf or something like that. And I like buying the knickknacks you get to put next to them and things like that. Like I'm on Amazon looking up Game of Thrones mugs or the Hodor door stopper, anything and knickknack that I can put up there and stuff to make it look real cool. So I like collecting them. But I know that I shouldn't buy every book that I read. It's just not going to work out. It's just, the pockets are not. I'm not built like that.
It's expensive. I mean,
Yeah.
then there's obviously like authors that you want to support, but I mean, Stephen King's not going to hurt that much if I don't purchase every single book he's ever written. He'll be all right.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Colin, when you've had to read on your phone, do you put your phone in dark mode, or do you read it like black text on white screen like a heathen?
So I guess I've used the Books app because I'm an Apple user. So
Yeah.
I have an iPad Air and then I have my phone, and I do I don't know, it's not consistent, but I always mess with the settings.
Yeah.
So that it's lighter, like it doesn't feel like my eyes are strained, but then I still I don't know. I don't.
You got to go
Just
dark
can't
mode.
last.
Dark mode.
Okay.
Yeah, dark mode. Like I can't. It'll help you read a lot more because it's black
Okay.
screen with white text, so it's not as bright.
Interesting.
And if you do it that way, I mean, it looks kind of weird at first because you're like, wow, this looks like I'm in like a negative space world reading books. But you get used to it pretty fast, and it is really honestly my preferred way to read. Is to read
And then you'll
on
come
my
to your senses and turn every device you have into dark mode.
phone. Yeah.
I have my Twitter and stuff, like all my Twitter feeds on dark mode. Usually if it's an option I use it, but
Yeah, like I mean, I do most of my reading from Libby. Like I do either I'm reading Libby or I use this app Pocketbooks because I get a bunch of digital arcs and it ends up being one that works really well with those. And both of those I just have it always set to dark mode, and it makes it much easier on the eyes, and I can read forever and hold a baby in one hand and book in the other, and that's the real key right now is like my reading has to be baby proof.
It'll change your life, Anthony. Do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Anthony he's gonna try it. The Kindle though, I don't have that issue with. Like I didn't know if I was gonna use the Kindle. Like I think I got it on like a Cyber Monday or something. Like it was cheaper than it would have been, and I love that thing. Like I buy all the Dresden books on there. Just certain series that I just don't buy physically because they're like 85,000 books long. And,
Yeah.
So I just collect them on Kindle, and I could just sit in bed like with the lights off. My wife's watching TV, pop those headphones in, and I could. I mean, she says the light doesn't bother her, but there's this little voice in the back of my head the whole time I'm reading with the light on. It's like, it has to be bugging her. Like, she just says it doesn't bug her, but it has to be bugging her.
So on the Kindle, you guys know those things that they put on the back of the phone so you can, be a Instagram model and stuff and take cool ass selfies. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the little
Things,
like pop things.
pop things. I
Yeah.
put that on my Kindle. That thing
Really?
is clutch. Yeah, man. I just sit there one handed, boom, boom, all night long.
That's really smart. I might have to do one of those for my Nook because it is like it's pretty comfortable to hold one-handed, but I also it's just big enough that I'm like, am I gonna drop this on my son's face? So
And they're not
I've-
light. Like before I got that, I dropped it on my face while I was in bed, and I think cut my upper lip. Also, what's today's date? Because this is the first time somebody
22nd.
said I did something smart. I want to celebrate this next year.
I'm gonna send you a plaque.
Okay, thank you. I think
We
I
can
need it.
memorialize it.
Okay. It's 23. All right, 6/22/23. First time ever anybody said you did something smart. All right, cool. It's in my calendar now.
Save it so it pops up as an event every year. Oh,
Like,
man.
watch, we're still gonna be friends in a year, and we'd be like, "Hey, you remember that time you told me I did something smart? Like, thank you.
And I'm
I
gonna
still
be like,
remember
bring the
it.
receipts. I don't believe it. I would never.
I play it in my head. Like, I have evidence. Like, this is live. Like, I'm gonna go back to it.
Timestamp it. Dan's gonna go back and watch the video and clip it.
Yeah, over and over.
On his
I
Twitter.
do that. I told you guys last time. I'm such a narcissist. I watch my own videos over and over again, but I yell at myself. Just like, do not say phenomenal again, bro.
I feel like
Can I make a formal request for you to film yourself watching a video of yourself and upload that as a video?
I need it.
Dude, that's an
Yeah,
excellent
need to
idea,
react.
actually. Because I told you I bring my wife down. I'm like, come on, watch my video. I'm like, look here. You see this guy? Look, this fucker's gonna say phenomenal. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom. Is this it? Does this idiot have another word? Can he use another word?
You had a comment on your last video that you put down saying like, make a drinking game. Every time I say phenomenal, don't try.
We did this last time. I think
Yeah, that's on
Robert.
Dan's bingo card.
Roberts was interesting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you drink every time I say interesting, you will be plastered at the end of like a 5-minute video. It's bad.
Mine would
Mine
probably
is-
be
I say
You know.
really, really cool.
I do see that in your
Really,
videos,
really
Caleb.
something.
It's funny though, because like I'll watch one of your videos and then I'll catch myself doing that like later that day.
That's
Like,
how
I
you know
pick
you're
it up.
catching on.
yeah,
right there,
it's a new
you
trend
know?
I'm starting.
That needs to be made into a GIF.
That's a great gift. We need to get that.
Oh man,
Yeah, we need to get big enough where we have somebody who just makes gifts for us, like Alan does, where he doesn't have
there's
to
some
do
great
the work.
Allen GIFs out there.
I was so surprised that there were Allen gifts. I was just like, yes, I can't wait to use these. Like, I wish I could use them in my YouTube comments and stuff.
Yeah.
That's fun. All right, well, we've been chatting for going on about 15 minutes. You guys want to get cracking on a sprint here?
Let's do it.
I guess. I mean, I really enjoy hanging out. No, I'm kidding. No, let's get
We can
something.
hang out. Want to sprint till 45?
Yeah,
Yeah, that sounds good.
let's do it.
Let me see. It's the first time I've ever made a banner. Boom. All right, guys, we're going to sprint till 45. Hey, Sean. We'll see you then.
Back at it again.
We're back, baby. How'd you guys do?
Good. I finished one chapter and I was 1 page away from finishing the other chapter. It's very close.
I think I finished my video or finished filming it.
Nice.
Oh, you filmed while we were doing that?
Yeah, I sure did. This is my YouTube sprint.
Nice.
It's a good way to do it. That's what Alan does. And I'm like, oh, that kind of makes sense.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. I oftentimes whenever I jump in on one of his sprints, he's like, I need to film or I need to edit. Like, it's a good way to work.
That is a good way to work. And I got like, I'm in the middle of a chapter, but I'm in one of those like hob, breaks in the chapter.
Yeah.
I got like 22 pages done, so I'll take that.
Nice.
Let's see.
Mike's
Couple
writing.
guys. Usman. What's going on, Usman? He is. Oh, you and Dan are reading both reading Memory of Light. Cool.
Ice. I'm reading Memories of Ice.
Oh, Memory of Light. That's the
Yeah, Wheel of
that's the
Time.
last Wheel of Time book.
Yeah.
I always do that in my head.
Yeah, Usman is almost free.
Christopher, what's going on?
Chris, what's up?
Chilling in
Hey.
Rome. I saw some
Hope
of
you're
his
having
pictures
fun.
earlier. Very jealous.
Yeah, he looks like he's having a blast.
Yeah.
Little Iggy Smalls shout out there. There we go. Allie did not get any reading accomplished, but hey, got ready for bed. That's getting
Listen,
something accomplished.
Getting ready for bed should be a ritual. You do you, Allie.
Yes. It's funny, obviously, we all have kids. So, my brain is rewired now. Anything at all that I plan to get done that I get done is a win.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah.
100%.
When I'm planning my day and stuff, I always write down 3 things I need to do with the philosophy of 2 out of 3 ain't bad. But when I'm at home, it's one of my days at home, I'm like, all right, just one thing. Just if I take a shower, great, mission accomplished.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Showering is the number one thing of if you can do that when you have kids and you're at home, that's a good day. Just get a
Yeah.
shower in. Everything else after that is gravy.
All right, I'm out of it now.
Yeah, to finish where you were.
Yeah, dude, shit was hitting the fan, and I was right at the end of a chapter, and I couldn't put it down.
You look like you were intent. So that's
I
always a good
was.
sign.
Things were happening. People were almost dying, so I had to see if they made it or not.
What's everyone reading? Anthony wants to know. I am finishing up Live Ship Traders. I'm about 210 pages in so far, so I'm on Ship of Destiny. I don't think Caleb's reading.
I'm doing In Conquest Born, so this is awesome sci-fi. It is so good, and the writing style is pretty incredible because I'm a little bit over 100 pages in, and it's all been third person, and then we randomly just got this first person viewpoint out of nowhere, but it worked really well. And I'm always impressed when they can play with that and throw in first person viewpoints into a third person book and have it actually work. It's pretty good.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And then I am reading an indie book. It's called Panacea by Alex Robbins. It's a Greek-inspired fantasy, and as I was telling Colin before we started, that just means it is Greek in a secondary world.
Yeah.
I said earlier, Memories of Ice. It's some big fantasy series everybody talks about that they can't pronounce correctly. I go with Malazan. I don't care what people say. Or Malazan.
I say Malazan because if I say Malazan, I think of Hermione Granger, being like, "No,
Oh
it's
my
Malazan."
Malazan.
no,
That's
I can't-
great. I love
I-
that. That's
It's
great.
Malazan.
Can't find that.
I think I say
Malazan.
Malazan, so
Yeah.
I say it differently than either any
And-
of you say it.
I finished this today.
How was that?
Uzumaki. It was good. All right. It was good. It wasn't great. Now this is my first experience with manga, and I went with horror, and it's not really my thing. But I would say like so there's it gives you like a whole bunch of stories with kind of the same people and this town kind of falling into a spiral, so to say. And there were stories in it that were excellent. There were definitely stories that were good, but then there were others that just didn't hit for me. The art was phenomenal. There's some great stuff in here. It just I was looking for more, just a little more. I know a lot of people say, he's great, he's really good. I mean, the art is absolutely gorgeous. I really dig that. And got the body horror over here going, and it was interesting. But I have this issue today that stories are just not wrapping up like I want them to, and it's a thing. It's a thing. Legacy was good. It wrapped up really well. And I'm gonna say that it wrapped up really well. Jade Legacy. I just wanted a little more. I just wanted a little more, but I liked it. I liked the series as a whole. It was really good.
Yeah, Green Mudslide is one of my personal favorites. I do kind of agree with. I'm not going to get into spoilers, but I do kind of agree with what we were talking about on the Discord, Dan.
Yeah.
I totally wish that it was a more action-packed ending. I think thematically it works really well, but after you kind of see Shay and Ait's moment in Jade War, I just wanted more of that.
That. Yes. Because I think that was my. So it definitely gave War 5 stars. I thought War is really where she was growing this industry, this criminal organization. You were getting all that building and stuff, so that was amazing. And then when we got to War, it seemed like the characters really started to grow on me a little more. I didn't like Hilo in City, and he started to grow on me in War, and I really liked him in Legacy. I believe there was definitely a character arc there, a good one, that I was impressed with. It's just like, thematically, like you said in the Discord, it worked perfectly. We saw, how, the growth of this clan and stuff like that. But I just wanted a little bit more. I read a lot of these last books in some of the epic fantasy stories I read. You always get like this fist pumping part, and that didn't happen here because it was more realistic. I think this isn't as drenched in fantasy because we are pulling from real world crime organization things. So I can see that how it probably worked better to do it how she did it. I just wanted a little more explosive type ending. And
You
I
guys
really
watch
walked
Brian
around
Lee
it.
Durfee?
Yeah, once in
Okay.
a while. Mhm.
I don't watch like all of his stuff religiously, but I was just looking up because I just finished Legacy also yesterday, and So I was looking up, people's overall thoughts, and he said like the way he said this, it made me like kind of rethink about it. And I love Legacy. Like I love the series. It's in my not completed series list, which completed series list, which isn't very long. It is now in my top 10. But he said, if like really what we're getting is just a snippet of one of these families' generations. Like there's centuries of generations of families between these two clans, and there will be plenty more afterwards. So this was really just like a snapshot of the Call family's time in No Peak and in the 8th family. Like, and that was like, you know what, you're right. Like, I was more okay with the time jumps and stuff like when I thought about it like that, because I was like, we're really just like, this is just one family story in this long line of, and I was like, that makes a lot of sense, because I wasn't thinking about it like that as much. I was more thinking of it like this is a series about the Calls, but it's really not entirely. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. It's this generation of Calls.
I dug how we got to generate it's we actually got 3 generations of Calls in this. We start off, the one guy is on his way out, and we got the new one, and now I don't want to go any, I want people to read this series.
We're pushing it.
It's definitely a good series. I just wanted a little more from the last book. That's Has anybody read 5 Warrior Angels?
I haven't read that.
No, the Brian Lee Durfee book.
Yeah, I haven't read it yet. It's on my TBR. I just learned about it like a month ago. So
they're speed bumps, though, man. They're huge.
Yeah, that's what it's come from. I see 11th Cycle on Cullen's shelf, and I have been reading that for like 5 months. Yeah. I bought it the day it came out, and I am just chugging through it. It's really good. I actually think it's some of the best dark character work I've seen in a book in a good long while. But man, it's just kind of a chore to get through.
Yeah.
Has anybody else read Lapvona?
No. I haven't read any of that author.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I'd heard of it before I watched your review on it, Dan. Because people were like, "This book is disgusting." I was instantly like, "Oh, tell me more."
But there, I looked up 11th Cycle, right, and went out and saw what people were saying about it, and there's a scene in it that people they're just like, okay, no, we're done. And I think the author got like a lot of flack for it, and it was a pretty tough scene. And I want to see if somebody felt that way about 11th Cycle and then has read Lapvona, because I don't know, he was getting some slack for writing a scene that's pretty violent towards women and stuff. And in Lapvona there is that, but she's a female author. So I wanted to see if other people were reacting the same way to both of these books, or if he got more of, he was, people got more upset with him because he was a male writing this, when, the scenes in Lapvona can be very, are very touchy in that as well. But it was just something that I rolled over and I started thinking about when I read this.
It's one of the weird things when you get into like markets for books, and the fact that like Lapvona is, like at my bookstore, I mean, that's shelved like literary fiction. And like when stuff, just because of that author's catalog. And so it's like, depending on kind of where it's fitting, people are like more okay with things like that for some reason. I mean, I don't know that it's necessarily right, but that's just the way that it feels, is they're kind of expecting to have the boundaries pushed. And then in fantasy, there is a history of some of those types of things being used
constantly. Yes.
And so in fantasy, you're battling that as well as being from
I think it's a good
fantasy
point.
is also a pretty male dominated
Yeah,
genre.
yes, that is
Um,
also a good point.
So I think dealing with that, you're going to end up with two different things, because it's like when you get to it in fantasy, you're like, oh, this again, like, and it's kind of,
It does happen a lot. Like some people do
yeah,
it just to make it grimdark.
yeah,
You know, just the rate. So it's just violence for violence sake, and violence towards women for just to make it a grimdark book,
yeah,
basically. And even Steven Erickson got, I think, that tag in his second book, Dead House Gates. But there was definitely reasoning behind that and things. I think we should move on.
yeah.
I just
I
think we
just want
should.
to say hi to Mike.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, Mike's hustling tonight.
Yeah, he is. Nice.
I'll say one more thing on that, and then we'll move on. But to that point, I haven't gotten to. I know what scene you're talking about, Dan. I haven't gotten to that point yet.
But you've heard about it, right?
Yeah, but I've heard about it, and I kind
Okay.
of saw. I think Kean is how you say his name. I saw some of the response to the book initially when it came out, and from what I have read of it, I would say, because he's very open, the book says it's inspired by Dark Souls and Berserk,
Mhm.
which, if you know anything about those two properties, they're dark. But I really feel like the book focuses on like these characters overcoming these horrible things they're going through. So I think my big issue with like SA in books and other things like that is like it just seems to happen to be bad, whereas the characters don't really. It doesn't have it. It's not relevant beyond that thing happening to them. But when the book is about survival and about getting over it, not getting over it, but overcoming it,
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the angle it's going for. So
Yeah, that makes sense. When there's meaning to it, as opposed to it's just like a plot device. Like I think that's what you have to be careful with. So.
So yeah, it's a hard thing to balance anyway, especially like as a man, right?
I think what
genre,
Robert was
so.
saying, this being a male-dominated industry, at least in this, fantasy, that definitely has its, a point there. But you kind of do look like R. Scott Baker, bro.
I don't know what R. Scott Baker looks like.
There's an interview with him, and he has that long hair that Robert has.
He's got the hair.
Yeah, he's got the hair that Robert has. And I just want to say, what's up, Shad?
Yeah, what's up, Shad?
Shad's watching the draft. You guys were talking about the draft earlier today.
Yep.
I watched like the first 6 or 7 picks.
Yeah, I had to go put my son down during the part where the Thunder actually had their picks happen. We're talking about 11th cycle, Matt. I think.
Also, hi, Matt.
Yeah, Matt liked 11th cycle. I remember hearing his review. He really enjoyed that book. But I've also, run into some people who did not like that book and that scene that everybody talks about, which I don't know because I haven't read the scene. But I just, I kind of wondered if, because that author did seem to get a lot of backlash for what happened. And I thought that if any of those people had read Lapvona, but I believe Otesha Moshfegh is also getting backlash for that book as well. It's just not seen as a gender thing. It's more they're just upset with her.
Yeah.
And that book Lapvona really,
Yikes.
if you're a religious person, it's there's some line stepping, and even me, that's somebody who's not really religious. I was like, whoa, come on, girl, you need to scale back on that, But yeah, it's just interesting. Some authors will get more trash thrown their way, and other people turn a blind eye in some aspects.
It was awesome.
Yeah, Sean, Spurs got Victor.
Yeah, I'm weirdly happy. Like I told these guys earlier, I'm weirdly happy for the Spurs to be relevant again, even though they're in the West and it'll make it harder for the Thunder. It just kind of feels right for the Spurs to get a generational talent. So
They're such a respectable organization.
yeah, I'm like, if the Rockets had gotten, I would have raged so hard if the Rockets got the first pick and were able to get Wimby. That would have made me really mad. They don't
my
deserve it.
my Sixers need to do a better job.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my Bulls, Dan. You at least made the playoffs after signing.
Yeah,
10
but that's
top
what
players.
we threw a lot of seasons to only make it to one time to the Eastern Conference Finals, and
To me, coaching is the Sixers' problem.
I think you're right. I think that has something to do with it. But Embiid is a problem too. Like I don't know. He's a big man. Everybody says he should be under the basket, but I get the spacing and stuff like that. But and Embiid just he turned the ball over so many times. It was just infuriating watching him sometimes.
Yeah, Embiid, more than anybody that I can remember who's like basically an MVP level talent. I feel like I would see him just like phone in some games.
Yeah, being a Kings fan's got to be rough. I mean,
R.I.P. my dude.
the last person I remember from the Kings was White Chocolate. I don't remember you guys. I don't remember you guys having another decent player for quite some time.
Oh,
The
man.
Beam was cool, and the Kings were fun this year. I mean,
Yeah, Shad. Nick Nurse will be
they
good.
didn't go out great, but the Kings were a fun team to watch. They throttled the Thunder a couple times.
I'm a Hoosier, and I think I'm the only one that does not have any interest in basketball.
Huh.
I
Did the
mean,
movie ruin it for you?
No, I don't know. I've just never had any interest in it. Maybe the movie did it. But I'm not the most athletic guy in the world.
Sean,
Yeah.
no. I did not finish yet. I am 200 some pages in, and this should segue us nicely into getting back into doing some reading if you guys are
Yep.
yeah.
Let's get another one going.
Ready
This
for it.
conversation,
It's-
you're walking some lines there, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, we do what we do. It's pretty close to 10 after. Do you guys just want to go till 40?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure,
Let's
let's
hit
do
it.
it.
Half hour ish. Gotta set up a banner for that puppy.
Rogue, you should be happy with this season. I was happy for the Kings fans. They deserve it.
We're gonna get back into this. We will go until 40, and I will talk to you guys then.
Right on.
Caleb with the aggressive coming back on. There's like so many sounds happening.
Dang.
It's called a dramatic entrance.
Yeah.
It worked because I never, like Robert said in the last one, I never know how to like, do I like soothe my way back into like?
Yeah, we need. I guess you need some play-in music that you can like gradually raise the volume. That would work.
There's my mom. Hi, Mom.
Ah, the cool one. She's on
The deadhead. Yeah.
the Deadhead.
Sounds good, Rogue. You're just a sprinting machine tonight.
Yeah, getting all the reading in.
Did you guys get some stuff done?
I got a little bit of reading in, and then my wife came in, and so I was chatting with her for a little bit.
Nice.
It's always a rare occasion when we get to like have an adult conversation. So when she wandered in, I was like, "Oh, let's have one. Let's go for it."
Yep.
That's not just like in passing.
Yeah.
Do you guys also send your significant others like update texts when one of you isn't at home? Like cats are fed, litter boxes are done, laundry's in the dryer, like just to update them on stuff you've gotten done.
Yeah, but mine is always a little bit more like, please congratulate me for being a productive adult for once.
I'm with Robert on this one.
It's like, hey, I
I'm
did the
always
dishes.
home though. Like I'm not out much. Like I'm always here. So, and nothing gets done when I'm here.
My wife and I just text a lot through the day, just talking about whatever. So now we're borderline codependent. So now it's like, if she doesn't text for like an hour and a half, I was like, "Are you alive?"
Mm-hmm.
What's going on, Escape? I have never read any H.G. Wells.
I have read The Time Machine. It's pretty cool. It's weird. It's fun though.
I like weird.
Yeah.
I like weird a lot.
Yeah, I'm going to be reading The Spear Cuts Through Water. I do think that breaks the mold from what I've heard of it. I'll be reading that next month.
Nice.
I like weird stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think these days that's really what I look for. As I kind of want something just different most of the time. So,
I think I brought this up on other reading sprints, but I just like to be relentlessly traumatized by what I'm reading.
It's gonna be a rough, like I was saying in the Discord earlier, like I'm gonna be between Malazan and Realm of the Elderlings. My wife's just gonna find me like huddled in the bathroom corner, like
You're really focused on
in the
this,
fetal
man.
position.
You're like psyching yourself out, you know? You guys
I just know it's gonna be a lot. It's gonna be a lot.
yeah.
I read Gardens of the Moon a few years ago, and it's not really, at least maybe I'm desensitized, but Dan, you could probably chime into this. I don't feel like it's like overly dark.
No.
Not in the way everyone thinks it is. It's just dense, and it's kind of hard to.
I think he's talking about like the size of these books, but Gardens of the Moon is definitely
More so, yes.
smaller. You're talking about the size or like the emotional drain of the darkness.
Both, because here's the thing: like when I'm reading these like Hobb books, like
Mhm.
let's say for instance, if I'm reading like a Dresden Files book, and you guys know how it is. Anyone that reads know how it is. Like I try to read every night. That's usually when I read. There are just some nights that like I really want to read, but I just don't have the mental capacity to like read a Hobb book. And so like when I'm reading a Dresden book or something that's like a little lighter, I can push through that. Like I can do 20 or 30 pages of that if I'm tired most of the time. I can't do 20 or 30 pages of a Realm of the Elderlings book if I'm like absolutely beat.
It's all that buildup. You really want the good stuff, but you know you have to be patient for that good stuff. So with I'm in Malazan right now, and this is a pretty thick book. And you get all that set up and stuff. You're like, man, come on, give me something good, or I'm gonna just fall asleep. I don't have, the time to just build this up. And I've shown people the books I've read and they're all over 500 pages. Like most of the books I've read this year are big books.
Yeah, I've read a lot of big ones as well.
And I just want something very easy, small, and like action packed. And I wish I did Elric on. I wish I read that as a book because I did it on audio while I worked, and I listened to it like 3 times. So I finished it, and then because it's only 5 hours, and then I listened again in case I missed anything, and then I listened to it again. So it took me like 2 weeks, and I felt like I got the whole book in through audio. And I just wanted something like that that's just like every chapter is boom, boom, boom. You're rocking. Like they call it heavy metal, Elric Saga. Like you're definitely moving and everything's happening. You're not being slogged down by that build up, that introspection on character work and things like that.
Yeah.
I think my 2 favorite reads this year were like shorter reads that I did. The Strange and then Titanium Noir. Those are both like 300 pages ish, something like that. They're just like very tight and stuff happens.
It must have felt good when Titanium Noir hit because I remember you were really excited about that book, right? Before it came out.
Yeah. It was one that I had
stuck the landing.
Yeah, I had been really looking forward to it because the cover is awesome. And I was like, well, this sounds great. It's like a sci-fi detective book. I love both of those things. And it stuck the landing very good. I'm going to go and read more of that author stuff, Nick Harkaway. Because I had somebody chime in my comments, and they were like, yeah, all of his other stuff is really good too. But his other ones are like chunky books. So.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite reads this year was very short. It was like 130 pages. It was What Moves the Dead of Pete Kingfisher.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to try that.
It's good. It's got, if you're not really into horror, it's a great starting point because it's only like a little creepy. There's really only one part at the end where you're like, oh, that's just kind of gross. But it's good. It's short. It's very much in that Poe style because it's like a modern retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher, plus mushrooms.
Yeah, I need to read more of her stuff because she's going to be in Albuquerque in like August, I think.
Nice.
Oh, that's awesome.
For like one of the cons here. It's called Bubonicon. It's a big like sci-fi con.
So cool.
Yeah.
Mike, I will be. Your book will be helping me in this capacity because I'm going to try my hardest to get to your first book, Becoming a Druid, next month. Because I'm going to read it, I think, with Christopher Navo, and there's a couple other people that are planning to read it next month, I believe, on the Wizardly Duo Discord. So.
And listen, Mike, you plug away. Like you got a market.
Yeah, plug away.
Yeah.
I want to circle back to this because this was an interesting. Did you guys happen to watch the? I didn't know who the Library Ladder was before Jimmy had him on the Fantasy Network for.
Yeah, I saw him on
Johnny
there.
with Nods.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going through some of his backlogs, and he talked about how a lot of older children's books, when they got republished by different publishing companies, were essentially like dumbed down, and we aren't really getting the original versions of these. And
Wow.
Like he talked about how that it inevitably will negatively affect children.
Yeah.
Like for generations to come because they aren't reading it the way the author intended it, and it's not necessarily the best thing to assume that they aren't smart enough to be reading at that vocabulary level. And I thought it was really interesting what he was talking about.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with that specific thing, but I mean, just that idea of like the expectations that you're setting, like people rise or, fall to the level of your expectations. So oftentimes having, you know, heavy literature and stuff like that. It's like you can give it to younger kids than you typically think, and they will be good.
Yeah, I read way above my age personally when I was in school. I read like a kid's book, and I was like, nah, it wasn't for me. And then I
Yeah.
started reading YA when I was like 9. And I was like, nah. And then I started reading Tom Clancy when I was like 11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never read a Tom Clancy book.
I haven't either, actually.
They're cringe conservative propaganda.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, between like Tom Clancy is probably the single most like the book that I run into the most, the author I run into the most at Goodwill's Salvation Army is like,
Yeah.
they are
Mhm.
everywhere.
Mhm.
That and James Patterson, obviously.
Yeah. So, some of them are pretty good, but they're mostly like Red Scare novels.
Yeah, I've seen that about the Roald Dahl books.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think they're doing that to take out like offensive material out of the Dahl
Yeah.
books. Which
As opposed to
believe
just, like, Dumbing it
the
down.
other guy was talking about is they were dumbing the language down to, you know, make
Yeah.
it more accessible for people. That's what's so good about indie authors. Nobody's telling them no, you can't do this, and you know that's it's good to have that non-filter on things because I believe many of us we just said we like things that break the mold, you know, and there are very few authors that are bold, you know, and when you know and just take risks and things like that. And I like to see those things, you know. Many publishing companies they don't. They're about those dollars, you know. So they'll tell them, you know, change this, tweak that, and do this, and that's where indie authors really have a you know, an advantage to really just give you their vision of, you know, untainted vision.
Yeah.
It ends up being rare when you see it. That's why. Have any of you read the Locktoon books, Getting the Ninth, and those?
No.
Yeah, I've heard, you know, I see them on YouTube.
Because those books are pretty wild, and it is like, whenever I read those, I'm like, I cannot believe that they let her write these books because they're pretty weird.
It's like necromancy, lesbians in space, or something, right?
Yeah, that's the tagline, which isn't like, I mean, all of those things are in the book, but like maybe not in the way that you would think.
That's what it's been sold as. I've
yeah,
heard that.
and-
You know, those are not my words, people. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's
But-
like that's the quote on the cover of the book.
okay.
Oh,
All
really?
right, good.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I mean, that is a good simplified version of what those books are about. But it's way more than that. But they're like really voice heavy, and then like the structure of how things change for each book is like a really big swing. And I feel like she probably loses some readers with each book. But if you like it, you really like it. And I'm always here for that kind of thing where it's like there's not a lot of middle ground. It's either like, wow, this is terrible, I don't like this at all, or like this is the best thing ever. And I rarely see anybody fall just like middle of the road on Locktoon.
Well,
Caleb, do you like epic fantasy?
I do like epic fantasy. I've been trying to read more because like the more I talk, I'm like, yeah, I love fantasy. I read fantasy all the time, and then I think about all the popular fantasy series that I've never read. I would say reading growing up, I was way more into like thrillers and mystery books, but played a lot of fantasy video games. So that's probably where my association with fantasy comes from. And then it really wasn't until like COVID where I was like, I need to start reading fantasy novels.
Yeah, I was just gonna make a suggest because you like horror, and the man was brought up in the chat tonight, but R. Scott Baker. If you can get through the epic fantasy, he definitely has a lot of horror elements in his fantasy books, and he's like my favorite author. So I always try to
Well, then yeah,
push it on people.
I'll definitely have to check it out because I have specifically been looking for like more horror fantasy.
Yeah, the Prince of Nothing series is yeah. There's definitely horror elements, sprinkled throughout that, as well as it's very yeah, deep and dense. There's philosophy like you can find Nietzsche in it and things like that. Yeah, it was an amazing series.
Great, I'll have to check it out. Yeah, when I type in horror fantasy on Google, I usually just get like the usual grimdark stuff, or I get like paranormal romance. Those are the two extremes. There's no middle ground.
It's got vampires though. That's horror.
I've never read anything. But
Yeah, I haven't read Jules Verne either.
I
So
haven't read Jules Verne. The book that I recommended earlier, The Strange, it feels like it's like in that Jules Verne like H2O style though, because it's sci-fi and it takes place on Mars, but it takes place on Mars in like 1930. And so the technology that they have is very like Jules Verne style stuff. So it's like a very interesting thing. It also has some horror elements because that author is mainly a horror author apparently. And I got halfway through the book and I was like, this feels like it's about to be a horror book. And then it was. And I looked up afterwards and I was like, oh, because that's what he does. He normally writes horror.
sweet.
But it worked really well for me.
There's an indie book that I've been meaning to read. It's not quite horror, but it sounds like it kind of straddles the line. I think it's called The Aching God by Mike Shell.
Yeah, it's free on Kindle. I got it on my Kindle.
Yeah, but it's basically Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like that's basically a dungeon crawling adventure, but they all have PTSD.
I only read like the first chapter, so it seemed like there was some zombies going on in there, and it seemed I've heard good things about it. Epic from Epic Tales, excuse me. He enjoyed The Aching Gods, and I downloaded. I downloaded so much shit on my Kindle, so yeah.
I love Epic's videos, man. I don't know how that guy doesn't have.
It's so good. I wish he would put
subs.
more time into them and things like that. I always hit him up like, when's the next video coming? He's had me on some lives and things like that. But yeah, I'm always hitting him up, asking him when the next ones are coming.
Yeah,
he was on with us, right, Colin?
Yeah, yep, he was. That's where I met him the first
time. Page chewing or what was it? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was on Steve and
Friday Night Talks.
Yeah, Friday Night.
I forget what it was called. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What do you think? You guys want to do another one?
I think it's bedtime for my old ass for sure. So I'm gonna be wrapping up here.
I got one more in me.
Yeah, I probably have one more in me.
I gotta get this video done one way or the other. So
yeah.
All right, guys. I'll see you. This has been fun. I hope we get to do it again.
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
get it on somebody else's channel. This was a good time, and I'll see you guys in the Discord in the morning.
All right, Dan. Have a good night.
All right, later.
peace.
All right, guys. We'll do one more till sprint till 30.
Let's do it.
And I will talk to you guys in half an hour.
Sounds good.
What's up? What's up? We got Madison showed up while we were all reading. What's up,
Yeah,
Madison?
saw that. The Aching was a very good book. Nice.
Good.
Yeah, I keep saying I like horror, and like the other day I realized I've just basically read a ton of Stephen King and like a few horror books. So like,
I know I keep saying it, but you should read Andy Davidson.
I'm going to. I really am going to. I'm going to read some spooky books in October. I had planned to like deliberately read some spooky books that were not Stephen King in October. Imaginary Friend I've had on my TBR for like a year and a half, and I really want to read that.
No, I haven't read that one. Who are some other horror authors I recommend? I mean, Andy Davidson is my favorite right now.
I tried
also
a Nick Cutter book. Have you read anything by Nick Cutter?
I haven't read any Nick Cutter. I see a lot of Nick Cutter though.
The one I read was called Troop or The Troop, and it didn't work for me, but the large asterisk I'm placing on that is that I did it on audio, and the narrator immediately just like I was not clicking with him. So
Yeah, I feel like horror especially needs like the right narrator. What are you looking for in horror? Do you like the creepy crawly feels? Do you like body horror?
I'll give you an example. Like
I can't tell if Colin's thinking really
Shining.
hard.
Oh,
I think you
no,
cut out.
No, I think
I think you
froze.
cut out there for a second, Colin.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so-
you stopped while you were thinking, and it just looked like you were thinking really, really hard.
Yeah, you look like you're still thinking like,
No, I think my internet cut out because I saw like something I've never seen before. But anyways, I'm back. So just to give you a vibe, The Shining is my favorite Stephen King book because the vibe of just like an entire family in a massive hotel by themselves and that psychological aspect of it really freaked me out. So I think I like more psychological horror, but
psychological horror.
I'm down to try other stuff because I've not read a lot of like body horror type stuff, and I might like it. I don't know.
Yeah. Andy Davidson, he's very King-esque. His book In the Valley of the Sun is about a serial killer who can't control his urge to kill women. And then he becomes enthralled by a vampire. So
Okay.
so there's a lot of psychological stuff going on. It's very good. The Boatman's Daughter is my personal favorite book of his. It's a folk horror. It is the least horror book I think I've read of that though, like of a horror book, because it's really just sad with some dark, creepy stuff.
Okay.
Honestly, that's like when I used to be like, I don't think I really like horror. And then I was like, let me try some. Most of the stuff that it was like, oh, this is just sad. That's what makes it horror, is that it's just sad.
Hi, Madison, by the way.
Yeah, hi Madison.
Unfortunately, Ellen's here and Madison this was our last sprint, so we're gonna chat for a little bit and then hop off here pretty soon. But yeah, I definitely want to read oh man. I don't know what it's called. I definitely want to read I Am Legend. That's been one that I really want to read for a long time. I have a graphic novel version of I Am Legend that my mom got me because she couldn't find. I asked for it for Christmas from her, and she couldn't find a copy of it, but she got me a graphic novel, which
Nice.
I think looks pretty cool.
You saw the last half of that sprint was me just like organizing comics. So
Oh, is that what you were doing?
yeah.
My last sprint. Well, I'm almost done with the rough cut of the video, so
Nice.
Nice.
I go through and put everything in order, and then I go do my goofy dumb shit that I do.
Yeah. The goods.
The goods.
I've heard a lot of good stuff about Wistful
I
Sending.
know. I'm gonna jump on that.
Yeah,
At
it's on
some
my
point.
list too.
Because the book looks really good and the author is very nice, so and funny. So that
Yeah,
that
I've
wins
seen
me
it in
over.
some of the communities, like some of the Discords.
Yeah.
Hi, Ellen.
Yeah, we're talking about horror. this, Where Starships Go to Die, is kind of a horror comic, horror and sci-fi.
Okay.
I was just I was organizing, and then I was like, oh, I never actually read the last issue of this, so I read that on my sprint, and it's very good.
Yeah, I'm gonna
It's-
have to check that out. I really really love the game Dead Space.
Okay,
That seems like it has Dead Space vibes.
yeah, there's a little bit of that to it. It's like they it takes place at Point Nemo, which that was not really a thing that I was familiar with, but apparently Point Nemo is on Earth. It's the point in the ocean that is the farthest from land.
Ooh.
And it is like the actual Where Starships Go to Die, like where when they're landing rockets and stuff, that's where they send them, is to Point Nemo, because they're not going to run into things, so like that's where they aim them. So in our world, there actually are like that's where they've crashed like old space shuttles and other things, I guess. So that was kind of the inspiration for this. And then there's like set in the future, and they're going to find a starship that's down there and like bring it back. And then when they're down there, creepy stuff happens to them, and it's very cool. So
That does sound interesting.
Yeah, I like all kinds of horror. I agree. I'm kind of more into. I like a combination of psychological and body horror. I really like it when people go crazy and like you can't tell what's real. That's my favorite. So
Okay. Heck yeah. The Haunting of Hill House I did read last year. I liked it. It was very different from anything that I've read.
yeah, I want to read that one because that's one of the classics.
It's a really short read, also.
if you're in the mood for horror, but and this isn't just you guys, it's anyone in the chat. If you guys are interested in horror and like you really aren't sure that you'll like the seriousness of the genre, John Dies at the End is a good jumping in point, I think,
Okay.
because
I've seen that book.
it's a humor book. It's mostly funny. It's just also kind of gross.
Okay.
Yeah,
So, like,
remember that the author for that, he used to write for Cracked
Correct. Mhm.
back in the day, and I was a big Cracked guy.
And you can tell
a minute
because the book is genuinely funny.
Yeah.
And then it's also just got some of the grossest things I think I've ever read.
That's
I want to
impressive.
read The Exorcist.
I
I've never
listened to
heard
The
of
Exorcist
this.
several years ago.
The Last House on Needless Street.
I have Last House on my TBR, but I haven't gotten around to it.
I haven't even
I
read
read-
some classics. Like I own Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Like I've not read that. I'd like to.
My main reference for Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is the movie The Page Master.
Oh, yes.
So that's
I
just bought a
had
Stephen
that
Graham
movie
Jones book. Have you
memorized
read
as a
him?
kid.
the Page Master memorized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we just showed it to my son like a couple weeks ago, and he loved it. So
That's amazing.
Yeah, my oldest son, he's not into reading at all. We have to play.
that's a bummer. We read all the time. with
Yeah,
our-
my middle son, like he's 7, so he's like really getting to that point
Yeah.
where like, he can read on his own, and he's just tearing everything apart. So, oldest son though,
not into it.
I want to watch Black Phone, but I just haven't gotten to it. I do really love Joe Hill though. Joe Hill is a controversial take. Joe Hill is Stephen King, but better.
Interesting.
That does seem like a controversial take.
Um,
I imagine it would come to things like he maybe lands some endings a little bit better, and
he also leans more into theme because I remember when I read On Writing, Stephen King was like, I don't think about theme. Like
Yeah.
I maybe tie it together on the second draft and then go and then it is what it is. But Joe Hill, you can tell, is like way more intentional about like the book is trying to be about something.
Yeah.
And Heart Shaped Box has some great horror moments, but his best book is Horns, my opinion. So
Okay. Good to know.
I was
So
trying to
definitely
Horns is not a
slice
horror
of this
book though.
stuff.
That is just an urban fantasy sad story.
I've read Lock
I
and
also
Key.
own Weave World by Clive Barker, and I wanted Barker is an author I've been interested in for a long time.
Yeah, I haven't read any Clive Barker actually.
Okay, I want to this Dr. Jekyll, Dracula, Frankenstein. I've only read Frankenstein. Have you guys read?
I've only read Frankenstein as well. Well, no, that's not true. I read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in high school. I read Frankenstein in college and I had to write 5 separate essays about it.
Wow.
Yeah,
I've read
my
none of
literature
them.
analysis class. It was
I
about.
own them all. I've not read them though.
Frankenstein is a must read for me, for sure.
Yeah, Frankenstein is a banger, and not because I had to write about it 5 times.
It's so good and it holds up to a modern read incredibly well.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
My
Escape,
daughter
you
loves
get it.
reading. She reads Junie B. Jones. She flies through those books. Nancy Clancy, Nancy Drew. I kind of read those ones to her. We kind of read those ones to her.
Yeah, my son, he's 5, so he's not quite to the like. He's starting to be able to read, but he's nowhere near the like. Just leave him alone with books and he reads them. So we'll be
Yeah,
getting
it's
there soon.
vastly different. Like reading silently is a thing that most young kids like. Just, I mean, it takes a while to get there.
Yeah.
I think it's a completely different type of reading.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard good things about Heart Shaped Box.
All right, Madison. The snuff film scene.
It's a big one too. It's like 800
Never read
pages,
Weave
I
World.
think.
This is more of a funny story, but my daughter, she's only 5. She just turned 5. Loves being read to. And the other day she came up to me and she's like, "Daddy, will you read this to me?" And it was the Night Angel trilogy. I was like, we'll wait a few years on that one.
Yeah,
That's funny.
it is funny with like, when we've got books that are like dragons on the
Mhm.
cover, and my son's like, "I love dragons. Read me dragon books." It's like maybe not that dragon book yet.
Yeah, I remember when season 8 of Game of Thrones was airing. Me and my wife were watching it, and there's dragons and fire and stuff. And my son, he would have been 6 at the time, just walks out, and he's like, "What are you guys watching?" I was like, and we're like, "Go to bed." I'm like, "I like dragons." It's like, "Not these dragons. Go to bed."
We watch Godzilla clips on YouTube because there are people that have done truly the Lord's work, and that they like the most recent Godzilla movies. They've just cut all of the stuff that isn't Godzilla, like actually on screen, and so I mean they're like maybe 10-minute YouTube videos, and we watch those with my son and just watch Godzilla run around and break stuff, and it's great.
Perfect.
That is awesome. That is so awesome.
Highly recommend. And the soundtrack's really good too. We listen to the soundtrack a lot because we're big soundtrack
Okay.
people here.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, my oldest son isn't into musicals, isn't into. He only likes very specific songs, but isn't really into music otherwise. My other 2 are hooked on the latest Little Mermaid soundtrack, though. So
That's a good one. We've been listening to that. We had a long run with the Greatest Showman soundtrack.
Yeah, I remember you saying you got into that. Did
Yeah.
you ever listen to the Newfound Glory version of This Is Me?
Yes, because we also discovered the Spotify playlist that has like the Zach Brown band does a cover of I forget the name of the song now, but yeah, it was like a bunch of covers of them,
Yeah.
and they are all so awesome.
Nice. I loved both Hatchet and White Fang. Hatchet's a great book.
I
I
actually
haven't
they're
read
one of the
Hatchet.
few. Those 2 books are one of the few books that like I remember loving having to read in school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I read Hatchet for school. I don't think we read White Fang though. So, but speaking of books that you try to get your kids into that they didn't, did you guys read Del Toro Quest?
Oh, hell yeah.
No.
Oh yeah.
I remember hearing you talk about them though, Robert.
Yeah, I mentioned them in. I don't know what I mentioned them in. I feel like I talked about them in some video. Probably a tag video. I don't know.
I think it was.
Yeah.
But I tried reading it to my son, the oldest one, surprised, and he was like, we were like halfway through it. We just got to the Forest of Silence, and I was like, Ryan, are you liking this book? And he's like, no, not really. I was like, no, it was just getting good.
Yeah, I was reading it to my son, but he kind of like wasn't quite ready for it. He was like kind of into it, but I could also tell he was like zoning out.
Yeah, so I'll try again in a year.
There's a little too much build up in that book. Now
There's
that's
a lot of build up in Forest of Silence. I was reading, I was like, I don't remember this part taking this long.
Yeah, I know. It's like I thought all this stuff happened in like 2 chapters, and like you said, it's like half the book.
But Grant, I read that whole first arc of Del Toro's Quest in like a week. So
I was getting them as they came out. So I loved that series. That series, and then The Seventh Tower by Garth Nix.
Oh, I've heard of that. I never read it though.
That series is awesome. I need to reread it because obviously it's been like 20 years now, and so I don't know if it actually holds up like it does in my brain. But that is like a weird fantasy, almost like sci-fi dystopian thing. I don't know. It's very strange, but it's really good.
I tried to employ this tactic as well. We as a family, for about a year, I think it took us, we read through the entire series of Unfortunate Events, and I remember loving that series as a kid, and we loved the books. And I tried to watch the show with my daughter, and she was just like, just not into it.
Yeah.
But the books, we were hooked on the books. Like I was downloading them on my library app to read them while we were at the beach to her at night because she was so into them.
Nice.
We do quite a bit of audiobooks with my son, and he really likes those. So like, trying to not do like a lot of screen time if we're eating and stuff. Like we don't want to always be like watching TV while we're eating, but sometimes we'll be like, like we can listen to a book while we eat, and so we end up doing that a lot, and that's worked out pretty well.
Yeah, we have a routine of either me and my wife will read to the kids for like 15 or 20 minutes before bed, and then we'll lay down in the dark with them and just listen to an audiobook for 30 minutes, and by then they're passed out. So they're listening to Stuart Little right now. So.
Okay.
Oh, that's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah,
I
really
told
want to
my
get them
wife last night. I actually told my wife I've been using these stepping stone books of like Junie B. Jones and Nancy Clancy, and trying to hone my different voices, because someday I'm trying to plan this. I want to read The Hobbit to my daughter, and I want the stars to align and for her to love it, but I don't know when that right time is, because it was just so magical for me that I want it to be that for her.
Yeah, I love The Hobbit I think I read it when I was like 11 or 12. And
That's around when I read it.
yeah, so maybe that's what to aim for.
Yeah, she's
Escape, I'm the same
7.
way. I also homeschool my kids, and it's a challenge because it's hard to get them interested in reading when there's not other kids around. But we go to the library a lot, so
Yeah. I mean, I work at a bookstore, so it's like there's there's books all around, and we go to the library. My wife's a teacher, so it's books all around.
And my mom was always reading growing up, so like even in the periods of my life that like I wasn't a reader, reading was never a taboo thing. Like I was used to seeing my mom read, and I think somehow in my head that stuck with me, and it just, you just think like, well, she's spending a lot of time doing that. There must be something good about it. Like, my brain would just like think like that, and I think it's, it's obviously it's come full circle.
Mm-hmm.
So I think reading around your kids, or just having books around.
Yeah, that's why I'm hoping. Grant, I read on my Kindle, so it just looks like I'm on my phone. So
I know. That's why I do try to do something physical as well as digital. That way, when if I'm gonna sit and read around my son, I like to try and do it like my oldest son. I like to try and have a physical one. But otherwise, we just have to say like, "Hey, I'm reading right now. I'm not just like looking at my phone."
It is
I'm
so
reading right
hard
now. All right, so
to
what's my
get
Candy Crush?
children to understand. Like I feel like I say I'm reading right now, it doesn't mean anything
Yeah.
to them. Like they don't understand that that means I am trying to singularly focus on this thing so I can comprehend it. They're just like, okay, I still need an applesauce and smoothie. Yeah, my dad never read, not for fun. Um, he was and is still a lawyer, so he read a lot, but just not like fiction. Really, it was never his shtick.
Oh,
Yeah,
so weird. I can't really picture my dad reading either. Huh. My mom read a lot though.
Yeah, neither of my parents were big readers. My dad would buy the new John Grisham when it came out, and that would be the one book he read every year. Um, and my mom says she's a reader. She's a liar. Um,
My dad collected like World War II history books like a true dad, but I don't know that he read very many of them. He reads a lot more now though. Like I actually like we'll end up talking about books and stuff. And again, he reads a lot of like nonfiction stuff. But growing up, he did not read.
Escape, I'm the same way. Sometimes I struggle with audiobooks because I have to be doing something.
Yeah.
But it can't be something where like it's too busy where I'm not paying attention. But it does have to be kind of mindless. That's why I paint these little models. It's the
Oh,
perfect
that's
thing to
cool.
do while you're reading a
Yeah.
book.
Are
Yeah.
you guys aware of the diamond art? It's like
Diamond art.
you like, so it's this sticky pad that has a crazy design on it, and you get tons of little packets that are like labeled by like letters or numbers, and it's like paint by numbers, but you like stick the diamonds on the.
Yeah, I've seen those.
So my daughter got one at Michael's, and she's been like poking away at it. So I was like, I wonder if they have like cool ones I'd be interested in, because I was thinking of just like having something to do while I'm listening to audiobooks. They make some sweet, like adult themed ones, like Stephen King,
That's awesome.
like horror ones, and I was like, I'm intrigued.
I'm learning to crochet so that I can do that. Just
That's
crochet
sweet.
and listen
Nice.
to audiobooks.
I bought a coloring book by Chuck Palahniuk a long time ago.
Oh, yeah, I
and have
remember that.
never cracked it open. I almost don't want to color in it because
Yeah.
the art is really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, this is bringing it full circle. We were talking about our book collections earlier, and I play Warhammer, which is a huge hobby. It takes up a lot of space, and as you can probably tell, I chose Warhammer over books.
Yeah. You kind of have to choose. And like I'm much more. I would rather collect comics than like books because of the art aspect. Like I feel much more attached to like being able to look at them than books for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm severely slow. There was like it's going back like 2 years now, but it kind of ended or tapered off then. But for like 2 or 3 years, I just gradually kind of built up the book collection that I have now, just based on like knowing by watching BookTube and hearing people's like reviews of stuff. Like, there's stuff I definitely wanted to get to.
Yeah.
So I've just kind of slowly been like amassing things, and I've really just slowed down recently because there's still so much that I own that I have not read that I cannot justify continuing to buy books. And like Robert said earlier, if God forbid we move in the next 5 years, it is
R.I.P.
going to really stink to have to move all this stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. Thinking about moving again. We
That's pretty cool.
That's awesome, and my wife just mentioned this as a retirement plan for us.
That's it. During COVID, my wife and I made a borderline reckless decision where we bought a school bus and we're halfway through converting it before I got a new job and we picked up and moved halfway across the
Yeah.
state. So
Okay, I wasn't collecting books, and then being at this bookstore, I now have like stacks of
Oh yeah,
yeah, I can
over there
only-
and like on the floor over here somewhere, like arcs and damaged books that I get to just take, and I come home and it's like a walk of shame when I come back in with another stack of books, and my wife's just like, "Where are those gonna go?"
on the floor.
On the
Yeah.
floor in stacks. Obviously, I'm building a castle.
no, it's funny. Like just like even since because I started this channel in January, so now like all of my friends in the area know that like I'm just the book guy, and I've had like 4 different people call me and tell me like, "Hey, come over here real quick. I'm at a yard sale," or "Hey, come over here. I'm helping somebody move. There's a bunch of books here. You might want them." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll come."
Send pics.
I got the three body problem just the other day that way.
Nice. That book is awesome.
I haven't read that one yet either, so I'm so behind on everything.
I feel like I will perpetually be behind on everything while still reading.
Yeah. It's been interesting being back on being on BookTube and seeing so much like what I consider backlist stuff being talked about, because obviously like in the book selling world, we end up very front list heavy because like we're seeing all the new stuff that's coming out, and so like for a while there I was reading a lot of just like brand new stuff. I was reading arcs and stuff that had just come out, and feeling like, okay, yeah, I'm kind of on top of stuff, and then I get back on BookTube and people are like, here's all the books that have been published in sci-fi and fantasy for the last 50 years. Do you want to read them all? I'm like, yeah, I do.
Oh man.
I really need to keep reading The Wheel of Time. I read The Eye of the World for the second time back in October.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to read The Great Hunt. I've had it loaded on my Kindle and I just haven't done it yet. So I stopped. I tried to read it like 10 years ago and then stopped at The Shadow Rising. Like I just saw how big it was. I was like, no.
That's a bummer because that's, as I'm sure everybody has told you, but that's
Yeah.
like what people consider to be the best one.
Yep.
That-
Every time I tell someone, yeah, I stopped at The Shadow Rising, they're like, what? It was just getting started.
When I first read Lord of the Rings, if you're like, I don't know if everybody knows the chapter titles. I know this chapter title, A Knife in the Dark.
Yep.
And like that's when they're in Bree and things really start like kicking up. Like you've made it through Bombadil and all of that stuff. And I stopped right before that chapter the first time because I mean I was like 11 and I was like, who's Tom Bomb? Like what is happening here? And then when I picked it back up and started reading again, I was like, I cannot believe I stopped right before all of the cool stuff started happening.
Yeah, the first time I tried to read it, I think I was like around 11, and I didn't even get out of the Shire. I think I got like 60 pages in, and I was like, no, I like the movie. And then I DNF Lord of the Rings for the second time this year.
It's a hard read. I reread it last year, and it basically took me like a month per book. Like
Yeah, I got
it
through
was-
Fellowship fine. I read Fellowship in like a week. I liked Fellowship. The Two Towers was a bit of a struggle for me.
Yeah.
I gave up halfway through. So Two Towers is my favorite movie of the trilogy. And I was so excited for the battle at Saruman's tower, and then it's just kind of told offhandedly through Mary, and I was really mad about it.
Yeah. It is not as cinematic for sure.
Andy Serkis just knocked it out of the park.
Incredible.
I immersively read the entire trilogy and The Hobbit with Andy Serkis because it was just such a wonderful experience.
Yeah, that's what my brother-in-law, he's a big Lord of the Rings guy, and that's what he says. Like next time I try it, like I need to just listen to Andy Serkis do it. So
He does an I've seen like clips on YouTube of him like performing it, and it is just so cool to watch. Yeah, Escape. Uh, I always said from the beginning, like, I mean, I'm not like I don't think any of us started a BookTube channel to like gain followers, because if that was our main purpose in starting a YouTube channel, we picked the wrong uh, niche. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I never wanted this to become a thing that I dreaded doing. Um, or like reading books I just felt like I had to read. Like I want this to be fun. Like, yeah, I mean, like, setting aside the time to like film videos and edit, it's tedious, but like I still enjoy, like, I love what we're doing right now, interacting with people like in the chat and like just getting to know people that love what I love. So
Yeah, I think almost every booktuber that I see talk, they're like, yeah, I never had people to talk about books with. I like to talk about the specific type of books that I read, because like I work at an independent bookstore, and like literary fiction is king there. Like that's what people typically, they're reading nonfiction, they're reading lit fic, and not as much sci-fi. So I needed people to talk about it with, and
yeah,
here I am.
Yep, and that's
and-
pretty much my story too. Is like I live in a rural community, so not only is like reading not super popular, reading speculative fiction is less popular. So yeah, I just did it because I wanted to have an excuse to talk to people about stuff, and then also challenge myself to read stuff that I maybe wasn't as interested in before.
Yeah.
I'm kind of doing a one for me, one for them kind of thing, where like I'm trying to read something that's a little popular on BookTube to try it out, and then also just one I'm interested in.
That's kind of how
Yeah, I
I
mean,
feel
like-
about it as well. That's why I'm doing Malazan.
yeah.
Because I would never have done it.
I mean, it's tough because like we're in such a bubble here, but like Realm of the Elderlings is a perfect example of a series I never, ever would have heard of if it wasn't for BookTube. And in the grand scheme of like just fiction, it's not that popular. It's really popular in the fantasy community right now, but like I never would have heard. Yeah, Lord of the Rings I would have heard of, and probably the Wheel of Time, stuff like that. But if I wasn't involved in this community, I would not have heard of the Realm of the Elderlings or Malazan even. You know what I mean? Like I just yeah.
Yeah, I would not have continued with Realm of the Elderlings if it wasn't for BookTube. Because I read the first three. I read the Farseer trilogy, 2020, before I was really watching that much BookTube. So I was still reading just kind of whatever I wanted, and I had listened to an interview with Robin Hobb, and I was like, oh, she sounds really interesting. I'm gonna go read those. So I read the Farseer trilogy, and I really liked it, but I also have a tendency to like start things and never finish them. So I just assumed the whole Realm of the Elderlings was like, I'm never gonna read those. But hearing people talk about Live Ship, I was like, okay, I gotta get it on this, and I am very happy that I have been, because they've been very good.
Yep, I just finished Assassin's Apprentice. That's actually the video I'm working on right now. I'm actually surprised by how much I liked it. I say it like 4 times in the video, but I'm way more into like plot-driven books as opposed to character-driven. And Assassin's Apprentice is, just character. But I was really, really into it the whole time, and there was literally a moment where I was like,
Yeah, it is. The book survives for sure.
So I'm excited to keep reading it. I don't know when I'm going to get around to. Is it Royal Assassin? Is that the next book?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know when I'm going to get around to it, especially since I've decided to jump on the Malazan read, but I will eventually, and I'm looking forward to it.
I feel like this is how every booktuber gets roped into Malazan. Like,
yeah,
they get roped into a buddy read.
yeah.
I'm like, I don't have to read it too intensely because I've already read Gardens of the Moon at least, but then we'll get to Dead House Gates, and it's basically starting over. So
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a great point. Like, I feel like, I don't read for escapism, but like, there is no other media form that like I just feel so intimate as like personally reading a book and internalizing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I used to be really into video games. I thought I was gonna go to film school when I was in high school, so I used to be really into movies. But none of those have like maintained interest the way books has.
Yeah.
Like especially ever since college, and I kind of got out of that. I think everyone kind of goes to like a college reading slump.
Yeah.
But once I got out of that after college, like I've been reading ever since. I read between 40 and 60 books a year. So
Film is so hard because, like, I mean, it's not a thing you could do by yourself. Like,
Mhm.
you need so many other people to do it. And so, like, whenever I was in college, like, I did a lot of screenwriting and we made student films and stuff. Um, but then, like, everybody leaves college and you don't have access to like the school cameras and like the school editing suites and all of
Mhm.
those things. And it's suddenly like, well, I can't afford like thousands of dollars of equipment, and I no longer have friends that live in my city. So I guess I no longer do film.
Yep, that's pretty much what happened with me too, and that's why I kind of want to start YouTube is because I can play with that film interest while still functionally be able to do it by myself.
That's
So
that's one of my things as well. Is that I do like getting to do some of the film stuff and the editing. There's a book that you would probably appreciate called Make Time by Jake Knapp and John Zaratsky, I think.
yep, I've got it on my TBR actually.
Is really good. But I think one of the things they say in there is kind of like if you're having trouble making time for stuff, like how can you combine some things, you know? And so for me, it's like one of my hobbies that I like is like film stuff, and reading and writing, And so it's like, well, BookTube kind of helps combine all of those um, in a way that is very rewarding.
hmm
Do you guys have an answer to this question from Ellen?
I'm gonna have to think about it for a second, Alan. I'm going through I'm kind of an idiot. I can't remember things I've read like 2 days after I read it. So
Don't feel
let me
bad. I
go through what
literally
I've read this
just
year.
referenced my Excel sheet that I keep track of all my books on.
Yeah.
And I
Like,
think my answer is going to have to be A Little Life. I read that after it was.
that book
pretty
looks like
light.
such a bummer. There's no
It
way I'm
just
going to read
was-
that.
It was. I read it with like we call it the Homies Book Club, which is like my IRL friends that aren't involved in BookTube at all, but we read books together. And it was too. I don't know what it was. It just didn't work for me, and I was seeing all these people make like reading vlogs and telling, about how just crushed they were.
Yeah.
The psychopaths we are. If someone tells me I'm going to be just wrecked by a book, it's like, But it was it was a little too over the top for me. So
Yeah, I looked through mine. I'm like, I have basically exclusively read bangers this year. So
this was a couple years ago. I read that.
yeah. So I can't really think of anything that I've read because of BookTube and haven't really like. I also honestly I haven't read too many things because of BookTube yet, other than like LiveShip. I started reading specifically because of BookTube, and that has been amazing for me. And then Malazan will be the other one, but I haven't done too much else. Most of my reading is driven by work and like what's upcoming, and if we've got author events or whatever happening. So
Yeah, I can have a similar problem. Like I just started doing BookTube, like 2 months ago. But I would say of everything I read, the thing I did discover on BookTube that was kind of like meh on was Kings of the Wild.
Okay.
It's fun. I really like the protagonist, Clay Cooper. It's just a lot of action, and I, for some reason, skim through action scenes, especially when they're real blow by blow. And Kings of the Wild is like almost exclusively
Yeah.
action for half the book. So
Kings of the
Yeah.
Wild is a book that people tell me the premise of it, and I'm like, I get it. I like I don't know that I need to read it. I feel like I get it. I'm like, that sounds cool, but I don't know that I would want to read a whole book of it.
Yeah, I think if it were just a pinch shorter, and by pinch I mean quite a bit shorter, it would have been great. I've been like, yeah, it was kind of awesome because it was a fast read, but it was kind of long and just action. And a little one note. I mean, the joke is, well,
Yeah.
what if war bands were bands?
Escape to books. Are you by chance Harry Dresden?
You went Harry Dresden. I was gonna say Jubilee.
I read the first 5 Dresden books, and then is it the 6th one where it's about the adult films?
I don't know. I've only read the first 3.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah, I haven't
spoiler,
made it
there's
that far.
one
I made
that's
it, like,
about adult films. So
I'm actually releasing I have it recorded already. Just like a general overview review of the first 3 books. Very
I
soon.
really love the first 3 books. I mean, Stormfront, Full Moon, and is it Grave Peril?
Yeah. Yep.
Grave Peril especially, I loved.
See, I'm like, I think on this one, like, I'm a little bit too much of just a special snowflake, and I don't really like to read things that everybody is talking about at the moment. And so it's got to be something that I'm like reading specifically with people rather than something that like everybody is gushing about, if that makes sense. So like Live Ship, it's kind of like it's buddy reading rather than like everybody's talking about it. So I've got to go read it because that just
Greenbone was like that for me.
it taints my view. So
Part of me is just kind of a hipster, I guess. I was like, the
Yeah.
more someone tells me to read something, like the more I don't want to read it.
like I wasn't watching a lot of BookTube last year when Babel came out, and I had read Poppy War and I liked it, but I thought the writing was pretty clunky, and I also that book ends in a pretty brutal fashion, and I was like, I don't need more of this in my life. So I hadn't continued it, and when Babel came out, I was like, that seems more like my speed, and I read it and I really liked it, and I didn't realize that like it had gone like insane on BookTube. But I mean, I also read it as an arc, so like I read it before it actually came out. So I think I kind of read it before there was all this hype and stuff around it. Now there are a lot of opinions about it, and I'm like, I thought it was good, but that was before.
Yeah, the Babel was kind of how I heard of R.F. Kuang. Is it Kuang? Is that how you say it? That's how I heard about her, and then I heard about the Poppy War.
Yeah.
And then I heard that the Poppy War was depressing, and the character made terrible decisions, and my interest just continued to rise. I absolutely love being traumatized by books.
Once you start Dresden, you'll see what I meant and why I asked if you were perchance Harry Dresden.
Rogue is saying down below that Long Price Quartet. I'm going to read Long Price Quartet this year. I'm not committing to very many things, but I really want to read that one. That looks really good.
Is it still like virtually impossible to find physically?
I think so, but that's fine with me.
I've never seen it in a bookstore. Yeah, I'm just gonna get it on Kindle.
Yeah, I think I even tried to see if I could order it for my store, and I don't think it's really possible.
Alan ruined the market.
Yeah.
I am completely overcommitted to series and things to read. So
every time someone's like, "Hey, what about this series?" I hear Caleb like, "Yeah, let's do that one.
Let's do it."
In 2026.
I think I was talking to Chris the other day. I was like, "I'll do all the buddy reads.
Yeah.
Just tell me when they're happening."
You're in Mistborn right now. How are you liking Mistborn?
I'm not disliking it,
Yeah.
but I'm starting to detect, I think, where I kind of delineate from Sanderson fans.
Yeah.
In the sense that I don't really care how the magic works.
Yeah.
So light spoilers for Mistborn, I guess, but I'm at the point where like Kelsey is teaching Vin how to use the magic.
Yeah.
And she's like pushing off the coin.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, how long does this happen?
I feel like if you're not into that, it's like, no, that is a key aspect of Sanderson is like let's learn about how the magic system works and let's run through it.
Yep. So I'm like, I like the world. It started off surprisingly dark because I read Elantris.
Yeah.
And I was kind of surprised how almost dark the Mistborn series starts off with. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Um,
I think the premise of Mistborn is pretty cool. I like the idea of like, yeah, what if the Dark Lord won, basically?
mhm. Yeah, I like all that, and like that seems to be the thing for me. Is I really like his world building. I really like the stories going on. It just takes a little too long explaining everything.
Yeah. That is pretty fair. I'll be interested to see how it lands when you get through the rest of it. It's also one that, like, you know, I mean, I first read it when I was like 18 or something like that.
Yeah.
And so it's just, you know, it's one that I've grown up with a little bit. So I'm interested to see what like full grown adults think when they read it, because I guess it, like, looking back now, I'm like, oh, it is kind of almost like a crossover transition book of like between YA fantasy and like adult fantasy because of
I
like
could definitely see it being like new adult fantasy.
Yeah.
So, because it doesn't really get into some of the grittier things that
Yeah.
fantasy can have. I'll be interested. I'm really interested to see what Way of Kings is like compared to this.
Yeah. I can see why, because Mistborn was a really good entry point for me just because of like my age at the time that I read it, and I can see why Way of Kings is maybe more for like slightly more seasoned fantasy fans. The thing that I always warn people about Way of Kings is that it has like 3 prologues. And so it's like it's a big ask of you to like get through all of those and then get to where like the story actually kind of starts. And I mean, I think it's worth it, and I think it's good. But
What is it? Is it just like a way of like providing history and like backwards world building that like leads you up to the present day, or like what is
yeah,
it?
so I mean, there's kind of like because there's like the first prologue is basically like a prologue to the whole series, because there's like gonna be 10 books, whatever. So it's kind of like, think about the prologue for Game of Thrones. It's basically like that style of prologue, that it's like not super attached to things that are going to go down in that book. Like, you know, you're going to have to wait for that. And then you get a prologue that's more like, this has implications for the world of the book. And then you get like one more prologue that's like, this has implications for the main character that you're about to dive into.
Okay.
And one of those prologues, it ends up being really a cool narrative device, in that big things happen, and over the course of the next couple books, he retells that prologue from different characters' points of view. So that prologue, you see all of the implications. Like, you think it's crazy in the first one, and then you start to see all the different angles to it. And I think that's a pretty cool narrative device.
Okay.
But again, it is asking a lot of you, because it's like,
Yeah, I think I'm gonna try and finish something like The Wheel of Time before I commit to that series.
Yeah.
The Storm Archive, kind of think of it.
Yeah.
Just to see if I can even make it through a big long series. I think I've only read trilogies, so.
Yeah.
I have 2 big asks of this genre. I need more standalones.
Yep.
And I need more 300-page books.
Yep.
Yeah. That's why sci-fi is so great, because you get both of those things. You get way more standalones and you get way more short books.
Yeah, I really need to start reading science fiction. I have read even less of that.
I've dipped my toes a little bit. Like I just did Project Hail Mary. I did some Blake Crouch. So not the heavy sci-fi stuff, but I did just kind of want to, like I said, dip my toes and get a taste for it. And
I really like Andy Weir. Like, I really liked The Martian. I really liked Artemis. I didn't get through Project Hail Mary, though. Something about it just wasn't holding my attention. I guess it's just because it seemed like The Martian, but more sci-fi.
Okay, see, I've never read The Martian. Project Hail Mary is
Oh,
the
okay.
first-
The
first
premise
weird.
between the two, like the kind of setup, is almost exactly the same.
Apparently, that's like his shtick, right? Man lost in space.
Artemis is a little different, but yeah, it's more of like person stuck in space has to do science to stay alive. So
Okay.
Yeah, like Legend has been making the rounds, and it fits the bill of like 300-page book, I think.
yeah,
Yeah, Legend has been making the round.
yeah, I've been meaning to read it because I keep seeing it. Like I think Andrew just read it again recently, or I saw a short he did about it. So
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was really
Theo. I know Theo at Rekindled Reader. He really liked
Mhm.
it too.
good. You liked it. I'm trying to look around and see. Do I have other short books around?
I've got Magician Apprentice on hold on Libby, so I'm hoping that arrives relatively
Yeah.
soon because that's like that 300 page. Also been thinking about reading Elric because those are also pretty short too, right?
I think so. I'm not sure.
I don't know. Is that the Michael Moorcock
Yeah, that's more comic.
series? It's kind of
And
picking up a
then-
little bit of steam right now.
And then Discworld. There's always Discworld for shorties.
Yeah,
Yep, I need to get back into. I've read the first two. I want to read the next
And
one.
those they can
sometime soon.
some of them can kind of work as standalones in a way.
Yeah, because there's a lot of them, right? I haven't read Terry Pratchett, so
There's 41.
Yeah, there's a lot.
41.
There's
But
41.
They're all, like some of them stand alone, and then some of them are kind of like interconnected. So you can,
I
you
just
can
know that
you
the
can
big
dip in and
turtle-
out.
Is that Discworld? Is that the big turtle?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's on the back of.
Yeah. See,
Turtle.
I'm an expert.
You are. Well, guys, we've been at it for almost 3.5 hours.
Yeah, we've been rocking and rolling.
Yeah, we probably need to get.
It's been a
off.
great time.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm glad I did this, and I'm glad you guys hopped on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
This was
And
good.
everybody in the chat has been awesome too. Thank
Yeah,
you guys
that's
for
amazing.
showing up. I wasn't sure
Yeah.
how this was going to work out. It's my first time doing a sprint, so I appreciate all of you guys for.
I'll
showing
briefly
up in the
talk
chat.
directly to Rogue and say I loved the poet chapter in Conquest Born. Like I got to their first viewpoint, and I thought that was really interesting and really cool. So that's for you.
I'm gonna have to go back
Cool.
through the chat and get all the book recs.
I know,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot of good
I
stuff.
really am too. All right, fellas. Well, I will talk to you guys soon. Thanks again for coming on the channel. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was awesome.
Yeah,
I hope you
anytime.
guys have a great night.
You too. Peace.
All right, see you guys.
So long.